I would just like to mention that Rohingya are stateless inside Myanmar because of the 1982 Act on Citizenship, which gave citizenship many ethnic minorities inside Myanmar, and they have really many, but Rohingya were excluded from that, right? As an outcome of this, they are stateless inside Myanmar, even though they have been living there for centuries, and they are stateless everywhere else because basically none of the hosting countries gave them official refugee status or a path to citizenship, to some kind of integration. Welcome back to Humanitarian Watch, a part of Fractured podcast by ReFOCUS Media Labs. Today, we want to take a closer look at the situation of displaced Rohingya. And this is because there's not much knowledge in general in society about who Rohingya are or where they are right now, what their situation is, but also because of the last incident. So in April this year, a boat left from Teknaf, Bangladesh, carrying around 260 Rohingya and Bangladeshi nationals. 250 of them are now declared dead or missing. Only 9 people survived. And we want to focus on the reasons why Rohingya take this really dangerous journey, because we're talking about moving from the south of Bangladesh to Indonesia or Malaysia. And I checked, and those journeys on those fishing boats, which is what usually Rohingya use, they take sometimes 2 weeks. And recently, UNHCR reported that there have been people who declared being on the sea for a month.
Yeah.
And there's like little water provided, little food. The conditions are absolutely terrifying. So as much as we want to focus on the reasons why people do that, and just to remind everybody, it's an open sea, right? Let's take a step back and talk about Rohingya, who they are and why are they displaced now in such a big number. Before we do that, I just want to remind everybody that we already had one episode on Rohingya, and it was a very deep one about the causes of their displacement. It's season 3, episode 16. So check it out.
Yeah, so I think when we made that episode, it was because there was another situation like the shipwreck in the news, but it was more about the fires that were destroying the camp in Kutupalong, which is just across the border from Myanmar into Bangladesh. So it's a logical movement of people, if there's conflict in your region, to just cross the next border, and that is obviously the first border. It's not very far. It's the bordering province of Myanmar, is Rakhine State. So in this area, we're almost 10 years since this started. So 2017, and around this time of the year, it's like late August, early September, you have 700 some odd thousand Rohingya, an ethnic minority in Myanmar. They're forced over the border in a direct ethnic cleansing push by the government of Myanmar at the time, the army of Myanmar.
Ethnic cleansing that now is called genocide. We have a case in International Court of Justice filed by the Gambia, and it is calling it blindly genocide, supported by many other countries.
Yeah, so like not just the 700,000 plus people who were forced out of the country, which basically cut the population of Rohingya in half, but many, many more people did not get out, and many, many more people were killed in the process. And this is like really, really apocalyptic shit. Like, you know, people coming in and firebombing huts and mass rape and all sorts of fucking terrible shit that happened to these people. And they've always been, you know, a target by the government, by the army, by the powers in the country for generations. It's not the first time Rohingya people moved into Bangladesh. There's an entire community of Rohingya that were already settled just across the border in Nayapara, which is right next to, in between Kutupalong, Ukya, and Teknaf, which is the bottom tip of Bangladesh. And that's from the 90s. So you have entire generations of people who have been living in exile. but they've been stateless inside their own country. So they're ethnically indigenous to this region, but they've never had statehood. Yes. So when you hear of stateless people, the first time I heard of stateless people when I was teaching history class back in the States, my students didn't even know what that term meant. And we brought in an expert, Greg Constantine, who was doing photography about the issue, specifically statelessness. And this was the classic case, right, of who is stateless. So 2017, 700,000 people forced over the border into makeshift cities, which in a recent episode we just had about Kakuma camp in Kenya. The idea that these are becoming like kind of permanent settlements, and now you have more people. Now we are sitting in a situation where you have like 1.2 million people in this region, just in Bangladesh, and there's only 600,000 Rohingya left trapped in Rakhine State inside Myanmar, and now you're in the throes of an epic civil war that's been unfolding for the last 5 years.
I would just like to mention that Rohingya are stateless inside Myanmar because of the 1982 Act on Citizenship, which gave citizenship many ethnic minorities inside Myanmar, and they have really many, but Rohingya were excluded from that, right? As an outcome of this, they are stateless inside Myanmar, even though they have been living there for centuries, and they are stateless everywhere else because basically none of the hosting countries gave them official refugee status or a path to citizenship, to some kind of integration.
Yeah, in Bangladesh, they're recognized as a unique ethnic group of people, but they do not have refugee status, as you're saying, because Bangladesh is not signed on to that convention. And they just consistently, even back to the time when we were there in early 2018, the mindset of the politics in Bangladesh has always been, this is temporary. The only solution here is repatriation. We are now 2 prime ministers removed from that Sheikh Hasina government that was basically saying, and I remember being there and everyone in the educational sector talking with us about what can we provide for people who don't have access to things. The argument was, well, we have to wait at least 6 months because we can't put a plan in place because they may not be here. So the argument in early 2018 was that none of these people would still be here because the government was going to repatriate them back. But at that time, there was still an active war between then government, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, against the Rohingya people in the Rakhine State. And now fast forward past the civil war erupting after a coup, and now you have madness again and on biblical proportions inside the country.
There's so many groups fighting each other there. It's just chaos.
Now. It's insane now. And so now Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International recently reported that in 25 they said that the Rakhine Army, which is a different ethnic background inside Rakhine State, which has purged the military junta out of the region and now has land control, they are now the new oppressors of the Rohingya. And you have people in open-air prisons inside cities that are just completely contained and sieged by the Rakhine Army, and they're fighting against the military junta, which is controlled by the military since Aung San Suu Kyi was taken out of power. And then you now have ARSA, which is an armed Rohingya group that's fighting as well, and they're kind of trapped in a triangle of sadness.
It is, because going back to this deadly shipwreck, this journey is extremely dangerous. So only since the beginning of this year until April, already 2,800 people attempted crossing, which is really a lot. It's only 4 months. But nearly 900 died or went missing last year. Taking proportions here, this makes it 1 in 7 reported dead or missing. So 1 in 7 people who are entering those boats in Bangladesh will die or go missing, right?
We know that this 17% chance of dying if you get on this boat. That's insane.
That was a very fast math. Yes, absolutely. This 1 in 7, when we take the rate into consideration, that makes it the deadliest sea route anywhere when it comes to
with that statistic.
Yes, when it comes to refugees and displaced people.
We've seen many more people die in the Mediterranean and in other spaces, but
definitely
the idea that many of the people make it to Europe right? There's a higher percentage of success in your journey if you pass the pushbacks and all the other things. But here, we've seen several films, we've seen documentaries, we've seen mockumentaries. It was a really amazing film at the Movies That Matter Festival called Lost Lands. It's by Akio Fukimoto, and it's the first film in the Rohingya language, and it stars non-acting members of the refugee community. And it kind of depicts this journey that the people take south to try to get to Malaysia. It was a really powerful film because it's narrative.
I can imagine how difficult this must have been, because Rohingya language is like not spoken anywhere outside Rakhine State, basically. And remember when we were there, it was so hard to get translation. Also, Rohingya didn't speak much English. It was like this broken Rohingya to Bangladeshi, a little bit to English. It was very difficult to run any programming in the camps, in Kutupalong especially.
In that film, like, it really depicts the journey and the idea of being at sea for an unknown amount of time. And there are times when the people think that they are off course and they're kind of just drifting towards India. They have no idea if they're going the right way. And then they suddenly have to deal with a potential attack from the Thai military at the border.
Yes, and they are not welcomed in India. That's just to say. The largest population of Rohingya outside Myanmar and outside Bangladesh is Malaysia, with around 126,000 people, and this is where most of those Rohingya leaving Bangladesh right now are aiming to get. And it is interesting because from a legal point of view, they also do not have refugee status there. They also do not have a right to work. However, the system sort of allows them to work without papers, basically illegally. It is sort of possible to earn living.
Yeah, but there's still a lot of people that are just overflowing detention centers in the country. They're not welcoming people.
Yes.
And then even in like Aceh province in Indonesia, where you have lots of people arriving, but a small number, like in the thousands, not even over the course of 10 years, you're talking less than 2,000 people. That's super tiny, 2,800 max or something, like really small numbers. And there was already, I remember seeing videos about the aggressive young resistance, like people, like high school, university level students resisting, attacking these refugee shelters. It's pretty unbelievable to think that they would behave that way at such a small amount of time. They were physically trying to push these boats back out to sea after, imagine being out there for like 2, 3, 4 weeks and finally somehow making it. And you've had no water, you've had no, people die on these boats. I mean, they just literally die. Some people die from suffocation inside because they're trying to hide them from military patrols. But if you're just out on the deck, people are dying from exposure. They're dying from all sorts of things. No food. They're starving to death. And then they're just getting dumped in the sea. So it's really terrible.
Speaking about people being so hostile towards Rohingya, one of the main reasons for that is the fear that Rohingya coming in big numbers will basically flood the labor market. And they are in such a desperate situation that they are willing to work for extremely little money. And we're talking about countries that are not very rich, and even their citizens do not earn much. Like Bangladesh is a poor country, and when we were there, remember, people were telling us that if now, people work for like several dollars a day, and if now we allow 1.2 million Rohingya, let's say half of them are children at least, so let's say 600,000 Rohingya, we allow them.
Say half of them can actually go to work because of cultural reasons.
Yes, of course, but it's still a big number, especially for this region, for Cox's Bazar, right?
For the region,
yes,
is a huge issue,
yes,
huge impact.
Yes.
But for the country,
no, for the country, no. But people see that they do not have many opportunities in the region, in the country as well. And now you have to compete with people who are willing to do the same thing as you're doing for half the money.
And one of the real reasons why Bangladesh has been able to grow as much as it has, it's 6 to 8% growth over the last decade, if not longer, is because most of the industries that they're becoming, it's helping that growth happen is like low-skilled, unskilled, labor in garment industry and all sorts of other types of ecosystems that are like they would be in direct competition with local Bangladeshis for those jobs. And that's exactly what you see happening in Teknaf and Cox's Bazar and the southern tip. Honestly, it feels like it's like Lesbos. Like the conversation is very similar to the way initially they wanted to support people who were in need, and there was a humanitarian energy also from the government at the time. And then you see locals starting to realize that the pressure or the stress, that the strain that's on them and their industries and their ecosystem as a small community. Ecologically, so much devastation has happened to the natural environment because people need to heat their homes and cook and live somewhere. And then you have, that you have a lot of different factors that have led to Bangladesh not having that type of growth anymore. And now you have a revolution in 24 politically, and then you have another caretaker government and a new prime minister now this year, which just so happens to be the son of the previous prime minister. So it's not really a huge change. Previous prime minister. But this impact is very much localized in a dramatic way.
In a very dramatic way.
Yeah.
So I think it is worth now to highlight what are the conditions in the camp. Around 1.2 million in Bangladesh, but predominantly in Cox's Bazar. We have Kutub Palong, which is the largest refugee camp in the world. More than 500,000 people live there, and they live in a very dense environment. We will be showing our viewers, so if you watch us, you will have a chance to see Doug's pictures from the time when we were in Bangladesh, so freshly after people came in 2018. So you will see those conditions of things we are talking about.
I think the reality is that, these images are not going to be very dated. It's sad, but
Yes.
It looks the same. I mean, the big differences between 18 and now, the number of fires that have destroyed things in the camp, the lack of security. Think about COVID goes through this period of time. Then you have an economic downturn. You have massive inflation in Bangladesh. You have a political revolution. You have a caretaker government that's just trying to keep the peace and sort of get everybody to stop panicking with regard to direct foreign investment into the country. So during all of these things, this particular community is an afterthought. They are, again, not even recognized. So they're just, when can we kick them back over the border? They're just waiting for peace on the other side, which doesn't look like it's coming. But all the people that are there are now, you have almost double the population since then. The conditions are worse. The crowding is worse. The resources are less. The amount of direct foreign aid in terms of humanitarian aid is cut in dramatic fashion. And there's no security. That's the biggest issue right now, is that there's no security because they cut that too. Yes. So now the people are really in danger of a lot of problems.
Yes, it was basically the whole time since Rohingya are there, more than 90% of them are completely dependent on humanitarian aid. And now this is cut because of US aid, because of basically donors' fatigue, and because probably those big donors also don't see that there's anything really can be done except for keeping people alive, that there's no peace talks on the horizon, no talks about incorporating and integrating Rohingya into Bangladeshi society. So this situation of those overcrowded mega camps with terrible infrastructure, with very poor hygienic conditions, that's going to stay for a very long time. And on top of all of that, we don't have there any access to education, almost any. There are those madrasas, religious schools, which teach predominantly Quran and some very basic ABC, reading, writing, and maybe counting. It's nothing advanced, nothing that would allow people to go to high school, to go to university. We met some youth when we were there, people who were trying to go around the system and trying to go to Bangladeshi schools, claiming that they are Bangladeshi. They learned the language enough to claim that. But in living in those conditions, and this is basically city inside city, there are small shops there and some services, people cannot leave the camp. They can leave only to the local market, but they cannot leave. There are there's army on the roads, and there are checks of basically every car, every vehicle passing by.
Checked all the time.
Everybody has to show their ID, unless you look obviously different, foreigner, like European, right?
But they were still checking us when we were coming through, and that's
not
9 years ago, right? And it was. But, the young people we were working with, they still had the opportunity of potentially being translators or being getting out and maybe working somewhere. But, you now hear that like they rarely even get out of the camp. So everything, and even now even Yunus, the caretaking government, was basically trying to be more supportive of in-camp ecosystems because they don't want them to come into their labor market, but they're trying to support skills training and some level of educational access, but it had to be internalized and it couldn't come out, right? So because again, they still say this is a problem that started in Myanmar and therefore the only solution is in Myanmar. So again, repatriation, that's really their only song, that's their only hit, right? So the people that are there, especially the young people, they're the ones who are desperate to get out because they see their whole life being wasted. And so the elderly or the youngest are most likely more, permanent. But the younger generation, the ones that we met that were in 19, 20, early 20s, the teens, they got to go.
Yeah.
They got to go somewhere.
Yeah. On top of all of those really horrible conditions, we have a measles outbreak in Myanmar, in Bangladesh, and of course this community is extremely vulnerable. So it is even worse in this situation.
Or maybe they could just take a holiday vacation to Basan Char and hang out there with the 35,000 other people that are trapped on an island in the middle of a climate crisis.
Yeah.
How is that the solution?
You mentioned the fires that take place in the camp, in all of the camps in the south. We had the recent one was in January this year, and as an outcome of this, 2,000 refugees were left completely without any type of a shelter. And this is a very the material catches fire very fast. There is a lot of wood, and when this happens, there's basically no support, right, to put down this fire. It is people are on their own trying to put it down, and that's it. There are no services that go there. There's not even a way for a firefighter car to go inside because there are no roads. There are tiny paths in the camps, and either people manage to put it down or it takes as much as it can. Going back to the cuts in humanitarian aid.
You said some numbers yesterday that were what the fuck?
Yes, this was something that really shocked me. So at this moment, an average Rohingya gets a worth of $12 per month in food rations. So they're not getting $12, they are getting food worth $12 per month.
Per month.
Per person. And just to remind you, this camp is completely dependent on humanitarian aid. They have no means of earning money except for individuals who work for NGOs inside the camp, who translate or build things.
It's 40 cents a day.
Again, I'm impressed by your math.
But 3 meals a day, what the fuck? 13 cents a meal?
Yes, that's the situation at the moment.
And they're going to cut that.
Okay. The food is, of course, much cheaper in Bangladesh than it is in Europe. But yes, $12 per month. That's all refugees in Bangladesh are getting. So now when you take all of those things together, the horrible conditions, the lack of right to work or being acknowledged as a refugee, the worsening situation in funding those humanitarian programs, this all forces people to flee this region.
Yeah, but more people are even fleeing Rakhine State now. They're 150,000 new arrivals. They're not. It hasn't stopped because the Arakan army took over the territory. The junta lost the ground, and now they're just carpet bombing the entire region. It's just like fire from above. It's insane. And the people who are there, if they can get out of there, let's think about this. Like, if they can get out of that, what do they go into? They go into Kutupalong.
Yes, exactly.
They go into this type of overcrowded, chaotic space where now madness is unfolding, and you have no security, and you have real dangers with regard to your safety if you're a woman, for armed gangs that are now trying to like really have a kind of like a fiefdom, and then also the potential that you could be grabbed and human smuggled back across the border and put into the service of the military.
Yes.
It's really, there's no real protections for them.
There's no protection, and maybe it's worth also highlighting that the moment the fund cuts came to this region, of course the like safety programs for women, LGBTQ programs, everything that is like women empowerment, health clinics, that was cut as first. Any like type of education, but also LPG gas for cooking was cut. And this is extremely important because this was distributed for people to cook and not use the firewood. Now people will go again, collect the firewood, and now we know it's a long road because almost nothing is left in this region, which was just forest. Now it's empty, and I think people will see it on your pictures. But this causes, again, ecological devastation of this region that comes out of desperation.
And now,
right?
now America's and Israel's decision to go to this unnecessary war with Iran is cutting off all of the LPG that would get to them. So that war is impacting these people in a dramatic fashion as well, because there's already reports of the chaos in India as a whole country. So imagine the impact it's having on, again, another group of people who are just expected to one day go back across the border, and they're never going to be a priority. So who do you think, if Bangladesh is struggling to have enough gas for their own societal needs and industries and fertilizers and all sorts of other things, how in the world do you think that the people in this region are getting enough? And then how much is actually getting to the Rohingya? Like,
absolutely. The situation is absolutely terrifying. I think they are like one of the like really most forgotten communities in the world. Right now, there's no big support for them. There are smaller communities who are somewhere in US or in Europe, but they are extremely, extremely small. And I remember when we were there, they were highlighting that without education, they will never be able to fight for themselves and advocate for their rights. And there is really no way for them to get education, except for like maneuvering around the system, obviously. But it's not on a massive scale. They will never be educated enough to understand the systems of the host countries, of the international community, and approach them in a way that may work for them and improve their situation.
Yeah, but you just had another election, and BNP finally comes back to power after 2 decades of being out, and Tariq Rahman's government has already just repeated the same things that the previous governments have said. So that's not going to change. So the political reality is not going to change. It doesn't seem like the situation on the other side of the border in Myanmar is going in their direction, or of any direction, because even if that war is somehow solved, the Arakan army is going to be in charge of that region. And they're, as Human Rights Watch is saying, they are the new oppressor for the Rohingya. So you'll still see more Rohingya trying to get out. And where are they going to go? They're going to go to Kutupalong. They're going to go to Cox's Bazar region. They're going to go to Teknaf region.
They're going to try to Indonesia and Malaysia again.
Yeah.
On those really dangerous journeys. So
this is a feel-good episode.
Right. Well, the only light in the tunnel is the fact that in January this year, the hearings in front of International Court of Justice started. And the court already implemented the temporary measures or provisional measures on Myanmar, telling them that they need to stop any type of genocidal actions against Rohingya. But we know that this is not happening. Human Rights Watch have been reporting that there are still horrible
But their reports go
persecutions
back to
happening.
2017. There's 9 years of these reports. And we also see genocidal acts all over the goddamn planet right now. And we don't see any international tribunals forcing anyone to stop what's going on in Southwest Asia, like in Palestine and the acts in Lebanon. Like, this is really insane shit that everyone's getting away with. Like, the norms are gone. So how are these people going to be protected by a statement or some sort of case against the government that's not in charge? So the original case is against the previous government. Now there's another one against the junta. But like, at the end of the day, there are actually examples of this same type of behavior being done by the AA towards the same people.
Like, it's maybe a strange thing to say, but the only good thing here is that Myanmar is not a very powerful country, so it doesn't have that much to offer, and the international trade doesn't depend on it. So more countries are willing to support Rohingya and acknowledge what is happening there. So the case in International Court of Justice that was brought by the Gambia, it was backed by a coalition of 57 countries that are in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. But later on, several countries that are pretty powerful and meaningful in this political game right now, also backed it up, like Canada, Germany, the UK, France, the Netherlands. So people see that there's obviously something bad happening there, and it is genocide. It has like it fills every single.
It ticks every box.
Yes, it ticks every box of the definition, right? We see the intent, we see the reasons, and so on. So the fact that it is there and the hearings started now gives some kind of a hope that maybe at least
but that's not what's going to do anything for the person on the ground. That's not going to change anything. It's going to change the history books later. It's going to make everybody feel better that they actually got some legislation passed or they put a couple of people in prison. The only thing that's really going to solve the scenario is economic pressure from China. That's the only thing that's going to solve the problem, because they want their access to the Andaman Sea. They want, for trade purposes, they want that pathway from Rakhine State to the sea. If it's not for that, nothing's going to change.
Number of times I heard over the last month, the only country that can finish this or that conflict is China. Yeah. Man, seriously.
Yeah, I know. It's a shift, right? But
mean,
it's kind of logic. I mean, there's a reason why China's always been involved in the region and supporting the previous juntas that were in charge. But the Rakhine State is critical for them. And so this area is giving them an end around to get stuff into their own country much faster than if it has to go all the way around Indonesia and then come back through the South China Sea. This is the fastest path for them to get things into the mainland. And when they have an ally there, so I don't know if they really benefit from there being madness inside the border areas. Like, I don't know how
China
they
always
could.
benefits from any type of madness.
Don't know how they could benefit from there being instability in the critical, like, entry point. It doesn't seem to make sense. So if they were to pressure the junta, or if they were to somehow start supporting one of the 14 armed resistance groups that have basically taken over more than half of the country against the junta, if they somehow were able to unite all of them and then create some calm in Rakhine State, that may change something, only because they want the smooth passage of goods and services and equipment and natural resources. It's never going to be about those people. I'm sorry, but it's never going to be about those people. It's fucked up, but it's true.
Here you have the solution, China.
Yeah, so pressure them, and it was a similar conversation we were having in other episodes. Like, pressure the allies of the group that you want to change their behavior, and then maybe something will change, because those allies are economic allies. And if you don't change that on the ground, you're never going to change their behaviors, because they're kind of acting with impunity. And so what's a piece of paper going to do? What's an arrest of one individual that won't be extradited going to do? Like, I'm sorry, but It needs to happen. I'm not against it. I think it should happen. There's ample evidence for it to happen, but there's ample evidence for that to happen in a lot of other situations, and that's not happening either. And it's just going to come down to the money, and it's really right now going to come down to what's going on in the Straits of Hormuz. Like, if they don't open that up, and if they cannot get LPG and they cannot get oil to the east, the pressure is going to come from China to solve the problem between the U.S. and Iran. It's not going to come from the Trump administration, and it's not going to come from Tehran. It's going to come from China. See what happens this week.
Yeah, that sounds
Watch
like...
Xi run to the rescue and solve the whole crisis in one weekend, in one... wouldn't it be amazing if Trump was undressed the way Zelensky was undressed in the White House?
Oh my God.
How cool would that be?
But like so far, he was welcomed with a 10-course dinner, so
Yeah,
probably
but
it's not going to happen.
probably wasn't enough McDonald's for him, so I don't know.
Okay, sounds like a conclusion.
No, it's a segue into another episode,
Yes,
right?
it is.
Okay.
It is. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Humanitarian Watch. We will be back with another episode of Full Fractured, and then we have a surprise for you, another format of Fractured podcast. So stay tuned.